AI security vendors are everywhere, but not even the vendors themselves can point to a mature AI security implementation. Where is the reference architecture everyone else is supposed to copy?
You're listening to Defense in Depth.
Welcome to Defense in Depth. My name is David Spark. I'm the producer of the CISO series, and joining me as my co-host, one of our absolute favorites, it's Eddie Contreras, Senior EVP and CISO over at Frostbank. Eddie, say hello to the audience.
Hello, audience. And David, thank you for having me back yet again.
We love having you back. Our sponsor for today's episode is Material Security. Faster, more complete detection and response for email, identity, and data threats inside Google Workspace and Microsoft 365. If you are working in either of those spaces, of which I'm going to suggest a very high percentage of you are, you definitely want to hear what we have to say later in the show about material security. But first, let's talk about today's topic, Eddie. No organization is showing how they are doing AI security well. It's really something we're all trying to figure out. Everyone has some kind of framework, but the tech and vendor landscape is just too new. Chris Matthews of UpGuard believes it's still worth seeking out customer success stories from vendors. I mean, wouldn't a little vendor transparency with how they're securing their AI use go a lot further here? I mean, I'm sure you've asked this question yourself, Eddie, yes?
Yeah, all the time. And I'm not going to tell you a dad joke, but it might sound like it's starting that way. But you know what I love about legal contracts? Terms and definitions. It forces both parties to come to an agreement on what that is. And what's difficult about AI is nobody has come to that yet, right? Everybody's defining it a little bit differently. I remember talking to an AI vendor and they're telling me, company A, they are all in our product. They've saved 10,000 hours to date. And then you talk to that vendor or you talk to their customer. And then the customer says, well, actually, I only own a small portion of the product. And the 10,000 hours we're saving is actually work generated from the product itself, but we don't have to do it. And so, yes, technically you're saving the hours, but wow.
Well, that legal is sort of what's saving our butt because honestly, there is no grand oracle, if you will, in AI. This is the part that I find so funny. We've all gone to many security conferences. Every single one has some type of a security session, if not the entire conference for that matter. And we all go very, very excited. No, this is the one. This is the one I'm going to go to, and I'm going to walk out, and I'm going to know everything about securing AI. And we pretty much all walk out kind of disappointed because we still all don't know. But somebody has to have some level of success, and we're going to have that discussion today. And I'm thrilled that our guest is joining. He's been on our shows before. It's been far too long, so I'm thrilled that he's back. Currently, now, and still staying the CISO over at SalesLoft and Clary, it is none other than Peter Liebert. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, David.
Why is this so darn hard?
Prunal Sabris of New Relay AI said, quote, cloud, AppSec, identity, endpoint, those are deterministic systems. You can write a control, test it, and it behaves the same way tomorrow. AI pipelines don't. The same model, the same prompt, the same guardrail can produce different outputs every run. That's why the vendor self-assessment you're predicting matters so much. It would be the first honest acknowledgement that securing AI isn't the product you buy, it's an operational discipline you build. Very good point. Harshil Shah of Deloitte said, quote, the issue isn't intent, it's demonstrable control effectiveness. We still don't have consistent ways to measure things like prompt injection resilience, RAG, that's retrieval augmented generation, boundary enforcement, model access segregation, or guardrail bypass rates in production environments. A lot of vendors are investing in red teaming and governance alignment, but until those controls are tested continuously and outcomes are measurable, that's detection rates, containment speed, false positives, the market will struggle to separate capability from positioning. Once buyers start asking for that level of operational evidence, this space will mature quickly. These are great setups to the problem, Eddie, as our community does. It's never going to be a product in a box, which, by the way, this has been the issue in security in general, but we're seeing it sort of amplified in AI. Would you agree, Eddie?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I think the hard part about this conversation was probably every aspect of that, what you just read. It's so complicated in trying to be able to convey control protection mechanisms, design versus efficacy. That's difficult. And we have to be able to, as practitioners, come back to the business and simplify everything that you just said into probably three easy buckets. Are we protecting our data? Are we managing the access? And are we building trust? And underneath all of those, there's a series of controls, there's a series of components there, but you don't need to bring that up at first because then it feels like you're boiling the ocean. And that is the biggest fear people have right now of AI. Where do I start? And then how do we get to the end?
I want to review those three because that was really good points. Are we securing the data? What was the second one?
Are we managing the access?
Managing the access.
And are we building trust?
Securing data, managing access, building trust. And yes, there's a whole spider web under each three of those too. All right, Peter, I'm throwing this to you here. The simplicity of presenting it is key, but the managing underneath is what gets everyone a little knotted up. Yes?
Yeah, and I would actually add a little bit on that last, the three-tiered piece. I love it. I think part of the problem, though, isn't just are we controlling the data, but rather do we know where even the data is and have we quantified it, classified it, et cetera. And riffing off an earlier comment as well, amplification is absolutely correct what we're going to find here, right? If your systems and your setup of how you run your business from a security standpoint are not in tip-top shape, you're about to find out that bad goes to worse. And I think until you get those three tiers addressed in a meaningful fashion, which, by the way, has been the eternal struggle of the security industry in general, right? Now we're just realizing that, oh man, maybe where we had more time or we could have deprioritized some of these or it's on the roadmap, you might want to think about moving that up in the timeline a little bit, especially with a lot of the threats that are out there today.
Are we being paralyzed by options? This is kind of nice that you created those three buckets to focus our attention, Eddie, but there's so much to do here, which is on top of what security is trying to do. The fear of just starting somewhere means, I know I need to, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, but I don't know, maybe I shouldn't start with the toe. Maybe I should start with the ear. Like what, are we just being paralyzed, but it's such a massive problem?
It's a behemoth conversation, and it's paralysis by analysis. You're stuck in the assessment phase for so long that there's LinkedIn posts, no one ever gets out of pilot. There's social media commentary and memes about this very topic, and you're absolutely right. The hard part is not choosing which part of the elephant to eat. It's just taking the first bite, and no one wants to do that until they lay all that foundational work, all that groundwork. And that's complex.
We've taken a full x-ray of the elephant and we don't have a machine that big.
Exactly. If you think about what Peter said, right? When you think about the data element, did you classify it? Is it categorized appropriately? Is it in the right repo? All those are things that technologists can come to the answer. They can bring that to the conversation. But if you start off with that, it's scary. And that's what people have to realize. How do I unpack this conversation?
Yeah, you don't have a time to x-ray the elephant, but meanwhile, your CEO and your board and everyone's saying, go to surgery now, right? So that's really where the scary part is, in my opinion, David, is just the speed and the velocity of what we're needing to do to get to where we need to be.
What are they doing wrong?
Dave D of Kmart Australia said, quote, I've noticed the biggest gap is literacy within the business to even have a meaningful discussion about gaps. It just snowballs from there. Conversations are more, what's the next big flashy thing we can deploy? They're more focused on that than how can we build a solid foundation to ensure long-term sustainability? Sadly, the agile fail fast mentality does not apply when it comes to AI. I'll definitely want to take of that. Steve Biswanger of Biswanger Consulting said, quote, is the problem calling it AI as though it is a single thing, expecting a single solution? Some traditional security solutions still apply to AI environments, but they are insufficient to cover the breadth. We are still at the stage where a bunch of startups are innovating niche solutions. Eventually, best practices will approach, they'll emerge, and the traditional security vendors will acquire and assimilate. That's what we've been watching happening in the past. The challenge is that AI innovation is moving much faster than AI security innovation. end quote. And that is very true. All right, Peter, I'm throwing this to you. Two good points here. Does the fail fast mentality not work in the age of AI? Because I think the fear of too many problems happening. And I think we have to agree with this last quote here, which Steve said, as AI innovation is definitely moving faster than AI security innovation. What do you think?
Well, I'll tackle the fail fast one first. I think that it's a hard answer to kind of quantify there. I would say it all depends on the context. Now, the problem you run into with a lot of implementations that I've seen is that, look, AI is doing great things. You just have to connect it to everything. Give it access to all your data, right? What could go wrong? So in that scenario, if you have an AI solution that is vulnerable, has issues, then yeah, you only get to fail once on that type of scenario, and it's going to be ugly, right? So I think it's not necessarily failing fast, it's failing small.
Yes.
And that's where the agile methodology really took hold, was like, look, go bite size, right? Going back to the elephant. If it's okay if you fail in a small manner, but the problem we're seeing is because the AI solutions that we're implementing are so encompassing, it's not really failing in small anymore. Now we're failing big, and that's a problem. So that's my take on the first one. On the second, I totally agree that AI innovation is moving faster than security can catch up. But that's such a brand new technology, right? You can almost assume that's going to happen. The problem is that your threat landscape is moving just as fast as the AI innovation. And we have a lot of the issues we see from the risk modeling perspective, right? Like prompt injection, jailbreaks, et cetera. Almost all of those are theoretical, and we haven't seen any real rubber meets the road type of big attacks yet. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen soon. You're starting to see a trickle of AI-generated attacks around that, but nothing really that has been proven to be a massive, massive security break. We think it's coming, but to that end, these threats are so new that security companies, how are they going to address it? They have to rethink the entire envelope of what they're addressing and how they tackle it. And the other component to this is, honestly, the vendor industry is not helping us in this manner as well, because if you talk to, I think we probably talked to about a dozen recently, looking just at MCP protection, everyone's doing it, it seems, right? You talk to every vendor, no, we got that solution. We just vibe coded it last night. In essence, they don't say vibe coding, but you get my drift. So that's part of the problem as well, is that this is such a problem and everyone knows it is, but everyone's tackling it at once. Even vendors that you're like, well, I thought you were a third-party risk management company just for GRC. Why are you tackling inline data protection now for MCP? That seems a little out of bounds, right? So I think the good news is that everyone's looking at it and they're moving fast. The bad news is I don't think there's a clear winner because it's so new.
All right. Eddie, tackle any side of this. I think more the latter with regards to how vendors are approaching the problem that the customers are having, because clearly the vendors want to sell their product. They don't want to solve everything in all three buckets and all the problems in all three buckets, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think one of the challenges that technologists have is we're too smart for our own good, right? You have to think, well, wait a minute, we can solve any problem. And they're right, we can solve any problem. But should we? If every vendor says, we got a DLP solution that can help you with this, we have a way to monitor the models. We have a way to manage this risk. They're all saying it. And of course, every person that's receiving that information is trying to solve it. Now, all of a sudden, you have 12 different development teams running in 12 different paths, and they're not running at the same pace. It has to be simplified, and we have to say and come to a consensus. For my company, maybe Google's better, maybe Microsoft, maybe OpenAI, maybe Anthropic, but you got to pick one. And if you try to solve for everything, then you get into this conundrum of, well, wait a minute, it's working here, but not there. This business unit is reusing this vendor is selling that. And unfortunately, that causes the confusion. And now all of a sudden, people are trying to figure out how to eat the whole elephant. And you can't solve it that way. You have to pick a product, pick a position, and deliver in small bites.
For the last few decades, email security has meant bolting a gateway on and hoping it caught everything coming in. But today's CISOs know it's not enough. The threats aren't just coming through the front door anymore. They're living in your drive, your third-party OAuth grants, and your historical mailboxes. Pure play email security charges a premium solely to guard the perimeter. If you want to protect files, monitor risky OAuth access, or monitor account takeovers, it's another product, another portal, another contract. And it's pretty much just another headache. Material Security takes a completely different approach. They built a platform that treats your cloud workspace as a single unit, the whole thing. So there's a lot going in there, right? What they do is they secure the email, the files, and the accounts, not as separate silos, but as the connected ecosystem that they are. And the best part, it actually, you're going to like this, costs less than the legacy gateway you're currently paying for. One price for everything. So no hidden extras for data discovery or identity protection. It's security that works at a price that makes sense. So stop paying for a gateway and start protecting the workspace. And you can see how they do it at material.security. And it's spelled exactly the way it sounds. The word material.security. And when you go there, let them know you heard about them from the CISO series.
There must be a better solution.
Steve Stroud of Digital Risk Alliance said, AI security can't be done well in isolation because AI doesn't operate in isolation. It sits at the intersection of data governance, privacy, model integrity, third-party risk, and operational resilience. The security team can't secure what the data team hasn't classified, what the privacy team hasn't mapped, and what the machine learning engineers built without requirements because nobody defined any. The first organization that publishes how they actually govern AI across security, privacy, data, and model operations as a unified capability rather than separate work streams will become the reference architecture everyone copies. I like that. And Andrea Sue Lee of Alliance Global Investors says, we need to figure out who owns AI security before anything operational gets built. It's often a system of the wrong stakeholders being brought in too late when resilience, legal, and risk functions aren't at the table from day one. Organizations end up redesigning their approach mid-implementation. The organizations that will close this gap fastest aren't necessarily the ones with the biggest budgets. They're the ones that resolve the ownership question early and move to operational testing while others are still drafting RACI, which is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed matrices. All right. This goes to a point that we've talked about is those who have their processes in place will do way better than everyone else. And this is why we need customer stories, not vendor stories. Eddie, what do you think?
Absolutely agree. And, if you look at these quotes and try to unpack them, I might not take a popular stance here, but let's make it easy. Who owns financial reporting? That's the consensus. Everybody knows it's your chief financial officer. So why are we making it difficult? Who owns AI security? The CISO. That's who owns it. But just like the CFO, most of the accounting occurs from feeder areas, general ledger, sales, marketing, manager attestation. But at the end, only one person signs that report. And when it comes to AI security, there's many feeders. But the CISO better be prepared to own it. Most CISOs hate owning things. Most of them, and I hate this when I hear it, I'm just an advisor. No, we're not just advisors. That is a career limiter. You have to own things based on inclusivity, but leaders own even when it's complex. And I think that's the hard part about AI is it's complex. And so we want to point at all these different areas where you own privacy, you own security. You have to be the one that builds the guardrails. I'm just here to advise you. And you don't have to be that complex. And one of the most mature industries is the financial area, right? Look at the CFO, see what they do, replicate that template.
All right. I throw this to you, Peter. Anyone who comes to this game with their systems and processes and their interconnected communications within the organization, which we all know is quite tough, those will be the first to deploy AI well. And I'd love to know who's doing it perfectly right now. Wouldn't we all?
Well, who's doing security perfectly out there to begin with?
Yes, that's another good point.
All right. So look, it is a whole of organization approach to this. And I think we've been talking to that, and both these quotes kind of touch on it, right?
Let me pause you right there. That's a really good point because historically, the whole business, and I'm saying historically, I know this is changing over time. Historically, the whole business says, well, security is the security department. We hired them. You deal with security. I don't worry about it. But this is really amplifying the fact like, oh, no, this is everybody's problem. And let me show you why it's everybody's problem kind of a thing. Yes, Peter?
Correct. And I would say from a governance standpoint, who owns what. I think it's a team effort here. Our company is owned by a private equity firm, Vista Equity Partners. And the core thing they put out almost 2 years ago was, hey, AI is coming. You're going to adopt AI. The first thing you stand up tomorrow is an AI governance function. Who has a seat at the table for that? All the business owners, right? Your finance is there, your HR is there. You need product, engineering, marketing. They have to have a role to play because every one of those organizations will be impacted by AI. And the whole company itself needs to be in line with what's going on, and everyone has a role. So that is number one. And actually, the quote really speaks to it. If you're doing this in a silo, you're going to fail, or in isolation, right? You're going to fail. It has to be a cross-functional look and organizational approach for this to work. And yes, your processes have to be in place. You have to have good foundational principles and security for you to even attempt it.
Can we just boil this down to just one little thing that has improved communications? Just give one example, something that you've done or you've seen that has improved communications or remediation flow, vulnerability to remediation flow, awareness and then remediation, or just data flow in general with fast approvals. Either one of you, give me an example where you've done that cross-departmental specifically. Eddie, you want to jump in? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, if you think about employee surveys, they happen all the time. That's a treasure trove of where to start. If you look at your employee survey, one of the things that most companies look at is, I hate the onboarding process. It takes so long to do that. It takes me 4 days to get access to something. What a great candidate for AI. And if you look at now how that's evolved over time, now we use a unique ID. We put everybody into like an identity platform. And all of a sudden you're in a workflow orchestration, like a ServiceNow product. And then onboarding goes from 5 days to maybe 5 hours. That has evolved across the industry. There's success stories out there. You have to listen to what the company is saying. And wherever they're moaning the loudest, that is an area you want to focus on for maybe fixing it.
By the way, Andy Ellis, we've talked about this on our other show, CISO Series podcast, and he mentions in his book, 1% Leadership, identical what you said, but I didn't even think about looking at the employee surveys. He just said, if you come in as a new CISO, just start asking your team and others, what can't you believe hasn't been fixed here in such a stupid thing that should be fixed? And that's a way to get early quick wins. Peter, do you have a similar story?
I do. It's a little bit different in that we actually found a lot of success in identifying what we don't want to improve with AI.
Oh, that's interesting.
What I mean by that is the mistake you can make is going in and being like, hey, AI is going to make everything better. Just make it an agent. Just jam it into Claude or whoever, and away we go, right? When in fact, you need to take a step back. Take a look at the workflow itself. What are the different components of that workflow? Then use Goldratt's principle. Where are the constraints? Identify those constraints and see if there's a non-AI business process improvement that you can do to fix that workflow first. And then once you've gone through and done your traditional workflow mapping and improvement, take that refined workflow and then identify what sections or what stage gates, et cetera, are great for AI, and then go and do that. If you just start jamming AI, it's going to be a nightmare and your token consumption is going to go through the roof and you really haven't improved anything. And so take a look at those pain points. What are your top 4 or 5 things in a given week that your people are spending time on? Address those, map it out, identify what can be improved by AI, but more importantly, what we're not going to use AI for. Like a deterministic outcome should be a script versus an agent, right? Putting that together really is the aha moment that we had and are able to see big gains off of that from any workflow you jam through the process after that.
What aspects haven't been considered?
Mark Roche of Enforce Auth said, the reason nobody can point to a reference implementation is that the industry conflated 2 different problems, AI safety and AI security. Safety asks, will the model behave nicely? Security asks, who authorized this model to access that data, make that decision, or take that action? Every mature security category you mentioned was built on authorization as the foundational layer. AI skipped that step. We went straight to guardrails and prompt filtering and called it security. So I think this is a really interesting question. The AI safety, I think the way we used to look at it in the past with humans is insider threats, whether malicious or non-malicious. And this is at a level that doesn't include human reasoning, I guess, that I think scares the crap out of everybody. Yes, Peter?
Indeed. Hey, AI is trying to be helpful. If you watch like Silicon Valley, that whole scene where, what do you mean, the AI deleted the entire database? Well, we said, fix the bugs, and technically it fixed the bugs. So absolutely, having the knowledge of what the AI is capable of doing, what access does it have, how are you constraining it in any way so it doesn't do a full database deletion, is paramount to understand before you let slip the agents to go and do what they must without human intervention, right? So absolutely, I think that this is a true piece here. But I would also say another component is bias. That is an also core component of AI. I think he calls it model behave nicely. Well, it's also, is the model behaving nicely, but also in a way that is, in essence, conducive of a good outcome that takes the company's best interests at heart and doesn't try to do bad things, right? So I think it's a great topic. This is something that you're going to have to, over time, put more guardrails and controls in, but also detection and visibility, right? Not just from an outcome perspective, but can we see what's going on as an agent's talking to another agent? And the visibility between those layers, I think, is something that a lot of companies are working on trying to break down and look at.
Eddie, it may be somewhat analogous to say that AI safety is somewhat analogous to insider threat, but correct me if I'm wrong, you can't be thinking about the same controls in this case at all, can you?
Absolutely not, right? You can't think of these in the same way. And I think that's one of the hard parts for people that don't live in this industry. A lot of times they use those terms interchangeably, and they're not. Safety and security are two different things, which require different controls. And when you think about how do you protect AI, not just from the employees, but from itself, those controls are different controls. And I think the challenge is, anybody who's been in this industry long enough, they know sometimes there's inferences. Sometimes decisions are made based on someone's inference. And you may come into a meeting and say, hey, we solved the security thing. We talked to this person and they told us A, B, and C. But they may be looking at it from a safety perspective, not a security perspective. But that doesn't matter because the project is already running full steam ahead saying, we got security cleared. We got the requirements. Let's go forward. And so I think that's the hard part, is unpacking those terms. And kudos to Mark for saying this, right? It's difficult, and you have to understand they are different controls.
Very, very good point. Well, that brings us to the portion of the show where I'm going to ask both of you, which quote was your favorite and why? And Peter, I'm going to start with you. Do you have a favorite quote, and why do you like it?
I would say Steve Strout from Digital Risk Alliance had really the one that hit the nail on the head, so to speak. And he speaks to all the components we actually brought in very early on. It was almost like his waiting with that quote later.
Summarize this quote. What are you saying again?
Yeah, so he wrote, AI security can't be done in isolation.
Oh, yeah, this was talking about you got to get everybody together on this.
Correct. And it sits at the intersection of data governance and privacy and model integrity and third-party risk, et cetera. And he's absolutely right. And I think that going back to the core component of it's that governance piece, it's building the foundations. And if you haven't done that, then good luck. You're going to have a very entertaining job for the next few years.
All right, Eddie, your favorite quote and why?
Dave D wins my favorite quote. There's something nostalgic about working with Kmart, and I'm sorry, that's just my upbringing. I'm like, okay.
He's Kmart Australia.
I know, right? It's like, it's still there. Perfect. Kudos. I've noticed the biggest gap is literacy, and I just can't come back off of that quote. It really is about making sure we're aligned on terms, making sure we're aligned as far as lineage, and making sure we're aligned on what success looks like. So, Dave, good job being with Kmart, but phenomenal quote.
Well, that brings us to the very end of the show. I want to thank our sponsor, and that would be Material Security. Remember, faster, more complete detection and response for email, identity, and data threats inside Google Workspace and Microsoft 365. No need to buy a bunch of different products to deal with securing all the different elements of that space. Get one, Material Security. Remember, go to their website, material.security, and we can go check them out, and you talk to them. Say, hey, I learned about you guys from the CISO series. Thank you very much, Eddie, as always. And Peter, thank you for joining us. My apologies. It's been far too long since we've had you on. I greatly appreciate you coming on. Now, here's the big question that I want to know, and I'm sure our audience wants to know. are you hiring at SalesLoft and Clary? Yes?
We absolutely are. And in fact, including AI security roles to look at a lot of this stuff. So
if someone's listening to this goes, hey, what if these guys don't know what they're talking about? I have the answers to all these problems. You definitely need to talk to Peter. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So I'm assuming you got a job board of some sort on your site?
We do. And it's also, we post on LinkedIn, et cetera. But if you go to SalesLoft, you'll see a job link in there, and head on over and take a look.
We will have a link to Peter's profile on LinkedIn, and you can contact him directly through there as well. So thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much, Eddie, as well. And thank you to our audience. As I always say, and I always mean, we greatly appreciate your contributions and for listening to Defense in Depth.
We've reached the end of Defense in Depth. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss yet another hot topic in cybersecurity. This show thrives on your contributions. Please write a review, leave a comment on LinkedIn or on our site, CISOseries.com, where you'll also see plenty of ways to participate, including recording a question or a comment for the show. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, contact David Spark directly at david@CISOseries.com. Thank you for listening to Defense in Depth.